Okay, at this time I'd like to call to order the April 19th, 2023 regular meeting of the Royal Oak Downtown Development Authority. First item, we will have public comment. If any of you wish to address, now would be the time, unless you have something on the agenda later on. So who would like to go first? Yes, sir, Mr. Harris.
Bill Harrison, 2729 Trafford and Royal Oak. There was a work session or whatever that produced this drawing of the 5th Street, and I didn't get an invite or anything, and there's supposedly one today, and I tried to get a hold of Daniel and couldn't get an answer on when that was going to be or where it was going to be. And as a property owner in that area, I would think I would get a card asking me to attend. I mean, let's face it, Witz was there. Anyway, commenting on the drawing, I'm concerned about three things. Number one, we're losing all the metered parking on the Center Street between 4th and 5th along the railroads. And then the parking lot, what I call the triangle parking lot, between 5th and 6th, it appears as though they're cutting down the number of parking spaces and putting in, looks like bicycle racks or whatever. We need every single surface parking space we can get. As you know, there are people that will not park in the parking decks, and as bad as our meter system is on Washington, they're still finding places to park, like on Center Street along the railroad. And I still can't find out how the system in the 6th and Main Street parking system is working now that it's gone to the MPS system. The other concern I have is the circle at the intersection of 5th and Washington. I'm not sure what that's going to look like. I would hope that it doesn't look like it's going to be difficult to get through. There's only a single lane going each way, and I want to make sure that there isn't something there that's going to obstruct vision as the cars are going through. As far as we're talking, as long as we're mentioning the parking meters, as you know, several times I've asked about the bagged meters in the parking lot out here and at what I call the railroad lot on Sherman Drive. They're bagged as well. I don't know whether Amtrak has put the muscle on you guys to bag those meters or not, but we've gone for almost a year and a half with the meters bagged out here and along the railroad. Why don't we switch it out? Take the bags off of these meters and put them on Washington and give our retailers a break. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Yes.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Frank Hobrecht, and I'm here to represent my building at 408 South Washington. There's a photograph here that of something I want to bring to your attention. I've been here a couple of times, as you know, because I've had a lot of joy with Royal Oak City employees. I've got citations here for threatening me with court for not replacing pavement in a public alley. The same code enforcement took me to court for not painting a brick. I could tell you stories, and I'm going to tell you about a story right now that's current right now, because I'm trying to get, on this photograph, you'll see a copy of a scissor lift. And I've been trying for 6 months to get this thing approved. We've had nothing but difficulty and just obstacles for something that is so harmless. My neighbor had a scissor lift, a place on the sidewalk. I took a photograph of it. And I'm asking if there could be some intervention. I've spoken with Mr. Twing about it previously. This civil engineering department, actually it's the engineer, and it's just difficulty. I own a building down the street, Hagelstein's Bakery. This engineer held up my building permit because I would not agree for a $2,000 street closure permit. Got to close the street. One delivery, one truck, one furnace, you got to close the street. That's engineering. I was given a permit. I want to renew my permit. Now we have to close the sidewalk. It is just, there comes a day that you just have had enough. And I don't know what the difficulty is about this scissor lift. It's a harmless little piece of machine. It's a little bit bigger than this pedestal. And you can read the comments of the civil engineer. He wants to know, out of the 14 feet that's between the tree trunks and the building, where are you going to operate the scissor lift? Now, mind you, the drawing that I gave him, I said it's adjacent to our building at 406 to 418 South Washington. Okay, we want to paint the building. We have to do a repair to the second floor. How hard is it to give that permit? And it is absolutely, you try, and you get denied and denied. And it gets more and more foolish. I thought I was done with foolishness. I have a lot of stories. I told you last month about the attorney that decided to defend a tenant that never paid a penny in rent. City attorney shows up, motion to intervene. It gets dismissed. Guess what happens? City attorney shows up again. I have to hire an attorney again. I gotta pay, and it gets dismissed. It shouldn't be this difficult to do business in downtown Royal Oak. It shouldn't be this hard. We have a lot of obstacles, 32,000 parking tickets per month. That's over 1,000 tickets per day. And we are just getting manipulated over and over. If somebody could intervene, Mr. Twing, please, give me my permits. At the bakery, I'm being withheld for a sidewalk closure permit. You got to close the sidewalk so you can work on your building. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. Anybody else today? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Move on to the next agenda item, approval of the meeting minutes from March 15th, 2023.
So moved.
Was that Director Dunstan?
Yes. Move to approve.
Motion by Director Dunstan.
Second.
Second by Director Leclerc. Any additions, deletions, or changes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And motion passes. Okay, next item, expense items, monthly expense for March 2023. I will ask the board if they have any questions for staff regarding this report. And I'm not seeing any. Okay. No action is needed. And we will move on. Next item, Royal Oak Historical Society request. I believe we have somebody here from the Historical Society.
Mr.
Did
Chairman,
you?
I
Yes.
have to recuse myself on this one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Dunstan is recusing himself on this item. Did you, only if you want to address, you don't have to come up unless we have a question, but you're welcome to address the board if you would like to. Okay. Okay, so Mr. Twing, you want to lead us in just on this real quick?
You do have a recommendation from the Marketing and Business Retention Committee. The Historical Society did attend their April 4th meeting and went over their request with them, which is for some assistance with their Memorial Day breakfast. You may recall, some of you, that DDA participated in this activity with sponsorship funds last year. What you did was cover the farmers market rental fee. Last year, I believe it was $2,000. This year, it's $2,200. And you also had allocated Well, it was 2,200 last year, excuse me. And you allocated 800 towards some free meals, free breakfast. The actual expenditures came in at the 2,200, and there were only 48 free meals. For the actual expense was 288. This year, the committee is recommending that you cover the farmers market rental fee at $25.50 and allocate $450 towards the free breakfast. That resolution is contained in your cover memo, and if you support the committee's recommendation, I would recommend you pass that.
Mr. Sopana?
Yes.
Actually, the farmer's market costs are $2,700.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's $2,700 for the farmer's market rental fee?
Yes.
Okay. Give us a chance to discuss that, and
Okay, thank you.
we'll call you back if we need to. Discussion. We did get a positive feedback from the committee. Director Yazbek?
So is the $450 that's in the proposed resolution for free breakfast, is that a sufficient amount?
Oh, definitely,
Yes?
yes. And we provide the breakfast for people either who can't afford it or have service.
Mike, can you ever come to the
I'm
mic?
sorry, yeah, I was just going to interrupt you and have you come up here so that other people can hear you.
So the free breakfasts are for people either who can't afford it or for service members or active duty officers in uniform. We also provide breakfast for the Boy Scouts who volunteer with us.
Okay, any other questions or? Director Yazbek?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed resolution substituting $3,150, $2,700 to cover the rental fee, and $450 to cover the free breakfast allocation.
Okay.
Well, if I can, in regards to the rental fee, in your packet, there's a April 13th, 2023 email from Shelley Mercer, or other at the farmer's market, indicating that the fee is $25.50.
Oh.
It's in your packet. It's $2,300 plus $250 for employee and cleaning. That's my understanding what the fee is.
Oh, I'm
from
sorry.
her directly.
I know our president went to Shelley and was told $2,700. That's the information. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
It's from 5 days ago.
I gotcha. Okay.
So what's the actual price then?
Well, we think it's
Well-
the suggested resolution at this time is probably the proper
Right.
Yeah.
amount. I just know Bob Mueller went and talked to Shelley.
Okay.
Like if she has this on paper, then honestly, this
Yeah,
is
that's
what it should
probably-
be.
I
And
would
you should be able
totally
to take this
believe
and
that.
turn to her
Yes.
like, hey boo,
Yes, absolutely.
this is what we're gonna pay you.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
it's
Okay.
this one here.
So,
Follows it up.
Is the $450, that's just an allocation, so if you don't sell $450, you won't,
We will not, absolutely.
You won't
we would
need the
not-
money.
We would not use that. We would return that money or,
so we can avoid back and forth regarding how much it costs to rent the place. I will amend my motion to say $3,150, and if, whatever.
If I can jump in on that as well, the 450 is an allocation towards it, just like you did last year with 800. What actually occurred was I requested that the Historical Society submit an invoice to me for how many free meals they had, and that's what they were paid. So by the same token, what I'd envision here is they would submit an invoice at the end saying how many free meals they gave away, and we'd write them a check for that amount, not exceeding the 450.
okay.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
I just wanted to make sure he understood how we were going to go forward.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Yazbek, second by Director London. Is everybody clear on the motion? We have a good understanding? Okay. I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, no problem.
in the spirit of the hockey playoffs that are going on now, the assist has to go to Mr. Twing on that one.
There we go. That's right. Mark it.
Okay. All right, our next agenda item, Royal Oak Chamber of Commerce Spooktacular 2023. Daniel?
What you have before you in your packet is a memo explaining kind of the dialogue that's occurred between the Marketing and Business Relations Committee with the Royal Oak Chamber of Commerce exec team for a couple months now. There's been a discussion of them kind of taking Spooktacular back and with that creating an event that's a little bit more scaled back, free admission for all, and hopefully involves our business community in a very respectful way. The committee has unanimously recommended approval for a 3-year contract from 2023 to 2025 for an annual amount of $20,000.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Any comments, anything from the committee? Director Yazbek.
I'll let the other committee members comment as well, but what I really liked about the proposal was the emphasis on including local organizations, the community involvement to make it a very special event, kind of bringing it back to the community where this type of event should be. So I was very excited about the proposal.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, there is a suggested resolution, but we did that. Did we? No, we didn't do that one yet. Correct?
No.
Okay. So
I'll move.
We would need some action.
I'll move. I'll second that.
Okay. We've got a motion by Director LaGrasso, second by Director Keith. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
You're on the hook, Shelley.
Thanks, Chris.
Did you need to add anything, Shelley?
I can tell you, I can give you a little bit more information if you want it, but I don't have to waste your time if you don't. It's fine, whatever you guys want.
For the community. There's some other folks here.
Sure.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
public listening.
Thank you, first of all. Just wanted to say we have got a couple things already going. We hired yesterday a sidewalk artist who does spooky, scary drawings. We've got a plan if it rains and if it doesn't rain. So we've got that going. One of the things that I had added into this proposal that I didn't give to the CMC was that my director of events and communications and I have decided we're going to turn the chamber into a haunted chamber for this event and have that as one of the stops. We've never participated. I don't know. Laura might be able to tell us we have, but as long as I've been at the chamber, we've never been a stop, and we thought it'd be sort of fun to, I don't know. I love Halloween, so I'm excited about it. But we'll have probably a mini donut truck or something in our parking lot to bring people down. But yeah, as Tony, as Mr. Yazbek said, we are very interested in bringing some of the community organizations that have to do with families, children, Royal Oak Youth Assistance, the Kiwanis, anybody that helps kids with scholarships, just because I know in my experience being on Royal Oak Youth Assistance Board that a lot of these smaller organizations are struggling to get their name out, who they are, their membership is dwindling, their income is dwindling. So we really wanted to give them just a platform to talk to community members and especially people with kids. And we thought this was a good one. We're also doing that for a summer concert series as well. So it's really important to us that we kind of include as much of the community as possible. And I have every intention, Heather and I have every intention of talking to business owners in downtown Royal Oak and understanding what would be helpful for them, just because I know it's a lot. So we have every intention of paying for a bulk of the candy, more if we can do it, and just making sure that it's a good experience for everybody. And no matter what we do over at Centennial Commons, there will be no charge for anybody. So it's no money exchanged unless they want to go into the stores and buy something. So that's it. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
What is it, Laura? Now, kind of not the time, but,
Well, it was kind of, I was waiting
okay.
because Spooktacular is very dear to my heart. It was started by 3 retail business owners back in the 1980s. Sandy Johnson from Hickory Hallmark, Kathy Sullivan from Dos Manos, and myself when I was in business. We got together. We never expected how it blew up. Just loved it. So I am 100%, and seeing as I am the half owner of the 3 buildings we own downtown, I am 100% support for the use of our DDA money that we pay for this. And I have pictures if you want to see what it looked like back in the 80s, and I know she does too. They window paint. We had the kids come and window paint, decorate the windows. My suggestion is to have the, what is it, the gal that does the windows, to do a fall Halloween, window to add to the look of the downtown. So that's all I want to say. I know if Sandy and Kathy were here too, they would be real excited. So thank you. Thank you for your support.
Appreciate your comments. Okay. Moving on, next item.
Yeah,
I thought we did.
we did.
Okay. Contract for holiday lighting, English Gardens.
Certainly. The Infrastructure Committee has, as usual, had a great time discussing this topic with English Gardens and going forward. They did decide to make a recommendation to the board to continue with the basic RAP plan that was used last year. However, because some of the lights are out of warranty, they're in warranty for 2 years, there is a purchase required this year for the canopy trunk wrap lights, so the expense is a little higher in order to acquire those and bring those forth. The multicolored strands that are in the Centennial Commons are also no longer under warranty, so those are being replaced. The garland and those lights were replaced last year, so they're under warranty and will continue to be used. So you'll see in the cover memo, the committee is suggesting that the DDA approve a contract with English Gardens. The total would be $344,318 and roughly 6 cents. And that would cover the purchase, installation, warranty, removal, and storage of the lights. There is a suggested resolution, but you also have a copy of the standard contract and contract language, as well as the plan for the lights is attached at the very end in terms of how it's displayed and where. It's very consistent with what was done last year, and it would be a 1-year contract. And the committee is continuing to work with ideas for both Centennial Commons as well as potentially other enhancements along the street frontage, but they don't have those recommendations for you for this next holiday season. So as I said, there is a suggested resolution, if you concur with the Infrastructure Committee, to move forward with the plan as indicated in your packet.
Questions for Mr. Twain? Okay, not seeing none. I just want to remind the board that the holiday lighting, the main bulk of the holiday lighting, as we discussed at the committee level, it's typically a 3-year cycle. So we are in the year of cycle number 1, which requires us to purchase the bulk of our material for this year. So the next 2 years, the contracts won't look anything like this. And I would recommend that you look at it more as a 3-year type of situation, spread out over a 3-year period, so you don't get sticker shock in this year. But other than that, those are my only comments.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Director Keith,
Second.
second by Director LaGracio. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. Okay, 5th Street, 30% drawings. Who wants to handle this? Daniel?
I'll take this one. So on March 20th, the DDA staff and Fleece and Vanderbrink hosted engagement sessions. Information on those went out via word of mouth from myself by walking around. The business newsletter that goes out monthly to our some 400 businesses that subscribe to it, as well as to the consumer-facing newsletter that reaches 24,000 people. We had several folks attend multiple sessions that day, including with adjacent property owners, business owners in downtown, city staff, especially as it relates to emergency access, as well as the general public. As a note, we have a couple sessions tomorrow for adjacent property owners and city staff, as well as in about 3 weeks, which the notice went out earlier, we'll have repeat sessions with the general public. We'll have 2 of them planned, as well as general downtown business owners as well on May 10th. Fleece and Vanderbrink, Rick Stout is here to help discuss this. As a note, this drawing is the very beginning. So this is just a very rough, what we call a 30% design. It's a 30,000 foot view to kind of get a sense of how do we take all of this feedback that we received from these sessions and start putting it into a design. Rick is with us if he has anything else to add, but other than that, I'll yield to questions.
Okay. Why don't we have the gentleman come forward? And I'll let you speak first if you want to, and then we'll see if the board has some questions.
Well, I think Daniel summed it up fairly well.
Okay.
Really what we're trying to do is not necessarily focus on, smaller, minute details as far as what kind of light, there's been some conversation. We're trying to really focus on getting some of that feedback that we got from those sessions and start looking at general uses, general programming, not only looking at 5th Street and the corridor, but maybe looking a little bit beyond that and how things may impact it, even though they're not part of the project. Again, just to try to promote a little dialogue, a little discussion, get some more feedback from those various groups, as Daniel mentioned, in these future upcoming sessions. So this is really just kind of a first attempt at what kind of uses could happen in the area, allocating some space, and then working with not only members of the DDA, the adjacent building owners, but also city staff to make sure that we address things like, through traffic, emergency vehicle traffic, garbage truck potentials, getting all this stuff kind of out on the table and seeing if we can kind of continue this process and keep moving it forward in the direction to eventually come up with, quote unquote, the project. So this is our first attempt, and like Daniel mentioned, we'll hope to get more feedback tomorrow.
Thank you. Question, Director Keith.
Looking at Lafayette, right at where the parking structure is, right there, that's one area that I would think maybe, if we could include a little bit of that, because we've been talking about with parking and lighting coming off that, like lighting coming out of that parking structure, maybe for some help with some safety ideas, maybe.
Exactly.
And would it make sense to align that with the street, that same pathway, to kind of give you like a lit up approach from that parking structure down to Fifth Ave. I think that would be
Exactly. I think that's where, again, sometimes we recommend looking at, I like to call it the macro.
Yep.
Because that parking lot is going to be a big component, and people, logically, if you can pull the people from that parking up through
that green space.
past there and make it feel, and collectively as a whole, I think that's going to make it stronger. So that's where some of that conversation has already begun, and that's spot on, because that's what we'd like to see as well.
So that would be one. And then could you explain what the tabletop intersection is? I don't know what that is.
It's just a simple, one of the comments that came out of some of the meetings is we really don't see the Fifth Street section is not really going to be a traditional street with curbs and whatnot. And so as you start looking at universal design and ADA accessibility, there's an opportunity maybe to raise that intersection just a little bit to ease pedestrian movement across it. It may end up being slightly a traffic calming perspective and keep traffic a little bit slower, but it should not impede, vehicle movement at all. There's also been conversations, again, semis and other types of deliveries. We have, emergency vehicle access. All those things are kind of had some input from the staff that whatever we do here will not interrupt any of that. So it's just a small technique.
Yep. No, I can see that being a little small speed bump. I can get behind that as long as parking and public safety is good with that.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is even down the pathways in regards, especially with emergency vehicle access, like in front of Fifth Ave, O'Toole's, all those things. Like, could vehicles get through that, like a fire truck?
Yes.
Could it get through that entire process, not just down Washington, but actually on Fifth Ave?
Yes.
So you see a lot of trees and things like that.
And we talked about the ability to program, and that's going to be more of that 60%. We talked about, either 6-inch reinforced concrete, 8-inch thick concrete, accommodating those vehicles. There's been, again, there'll be more discussion with the police and fire on that as well. Because there's also been a talk of programming removable bollards that they would have access to, again, to try to control it when it's not necessary, but when it does need to happen, it needs to happen fairly quickly. So those are all those next level details, but we're already mentally thinking that way as well.
Who controls this space? So, like, say if someone wanted to do an event, I know it's the city, but like at this point, how much interface is there between the businesses and the city, and like who do we talk to? Like, hey, we want to do something here.
I know that there's been some conversation.
It would depend on it wouldn't be these gentlemen, but it depended on the event, and so forth. Whether it would need a special event permit, then it would go through
the usual,
the usual accesses that all the other events that we do in the downtown would be. So it is city-owned property, so it would just fall under the same category.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, only to add that if an event is approved 1 year, the following year, if it's the same thing, it generally doesn't need to go through the full process again. It's just administratively dealt with, so.
And I think one thing that we've had discussions with a lot of people on too is the overall intent of this space is to have it be very flexible, meet a lot of different uses. So again, we're trying to keep that in mind too, that it does need to meet a lot of different types of events, and to kind of work that in as we go. Again, back to that 60%, there's already been conversations about additional power and lighting, and again, the feedback from the police department, public safety, their concerns. And I think the one overwhelming thing we've heard from a lot of people is they want a tremendous amount of lighting, great visibility, fun, vibrant, but yet very well lit. So those are all things that we're trying to work through as well.
Because ideally speaking, if this works like it's supposed to, then there should be a huge influx of, like when they did this same concept downtown, some of those, prime streets, the businesses and everything around there has flourished in such a way. Mm-hmm. So ideally speaking, we do this right.
Exactly, and I think we've already had some of the discussions that that there's a real opportunity for a real type of branding space to really serve as a heart or a hub. That's kind of where the heart symbol came from. Just kind of like playfully on that is there's a real opportunity here to give this, a real identity and a real spot for a lot of people to gather. And I think that's the direction we're trying to head.
Makes sense.
Director Von Saden?
Yep. I think this is on.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had provided some markups on the drawing, obviously, through the lens of not only a person who lives right next to this space, but also through, being a design professional myself. So I don't know whether or not it makes sense to go through each point, because some of them may be too granular for this discussion. But in general, I would encourage you to spend a little bit more time in the space between Washington and Lafayette, because there's many aspects of that alley, not only its geometry, but so for example, the planter that's closest to Washington actually would impede on the entrance to Citizen Yoga.
Actually, it doesn't. It's just short of that.
Okay.
Yeah, but which is fine.
Okay.
But again, we want to make sure that meets, not only it's got to meet the practical, but it's also got to meet the functional and the expanding uses. I mean, there's a lot of discussion, and like I said, there's going to be more of, do we shorten up some of these things? Do we expand this?
Sure.
It was just, again, this was kind of a first blush from that. And again, we realize that area does need a little bit of tweaking.
Yeah.
And we do have your comments, and we are taking those to heart.
If you've already received them, then
I've
that's
read,
great.
like things, we were talking, like some of the comments would be, and some of the red squares, that we didn't really label them, but what we're talking about is their ability for like pop-up kiosks and things like that for small retail, little things. And so we're still, again, one of the initial comments is, well, could we put those somewhere on Fifth Street itself? But then with the emergency vehicle access, that was probably the primary. So again, some of these things are still fluid, but again, we just, if nothing else, we wanted to push the envelope a little bit to get some dialogue. So
I think that if one of your goals in this whole process is, you talk about creating a center, I feel as though I know it's difficult because of the geometry, but it feels as though it's too spread out, that there isn't enough focus, if that's possible, on that intersection of Washington and Fifth. And it may be just that it has to become larger, not necessarily the focus on sort of like creating a two archways that then sort of maybe they act as like bookends, and I don't know whether or not we want to bookend anything. So I would just sort of say, if you want to focus on a single heart, a single center, there can't be more than one. We really need to focus on that. So it's not to say that the intersection of Fifth and Lafayette isn't important, and I agree that lighting and all of that is important. But do we need to put our money in there and put the
and that's something that could come or go. And again, I think our thought again was more of looking at that intersection as a key way to really connect the two parts, and really to create, I don't like to think of it as an intersection, I like to think of it more as like an outdoor room per se, and just start getting the idea we have to think three-dimensionally, whatever that may be. And that was just kind of the genesis for that.
And then I made a request to see images of the water features in the winter, because these water features look great in the photos in the summer because that's when you're using them. But we know, this last week of weather is a great example of how, when probably if this had been present last week, everybody would have said, why isn't the water on? And of course it would have been impossible to turn the water on. And then 3 days later, 2 days later, 6 hours later, it becomes 30 degrees and you don't want the water on. I'm somewhat opposed to spending what I know is the resources that would be required to both build and maintain a water feature in Michigan, just because of the variability of how infrequent, or just the fact that you're only really using it a couple months in the year. So I would encourage you to think about what could that be without it being a water feature.
Well, and we thought everything from either some type of art node would be a possibility, even something like a holiday tree location or some other type of thing that could be another. So I think it's going back to that, being really flexible with the space. So it could be used 3 or 4 different ways. Not in, when I say water feature, I think of something very simple, but again, that's to be determined on what that may be.
Yep, those are just my initial
comments. And I think, thank you, I appreciate it.
And then the idea, is it that you were imagining around the water feature there being 2 shade structures?
Potentially.
Okay. I think one of the interesting things about this street is when you walk by what is now L'Esprit, the salon, you have that under canopy part of the walkway. And then you have these awnings along in front of Fifth Avenue, so whether or not those covered areas are there. One is impossible to remove because it would be removing a portion of the building. The others are awnings and maybe more flexible, and the building owners may. But the relationship of those things to any permanent structures, I think, needs to be considered as you're moving through the design process. And then I think that other people will more eloquently talk about parking. So I'll cede the floor.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Director. Any other comment? Director Lundman.
I'm not eloquent, but I will talk about parking. So behind Center Street is an alleyway that parallels a railroad track. And I meant to count today, but I'm guessing there's 15 to 18 parallel parking spots. And my business is behind there, and I'm trapped there, I would say, maybe 75% of the time for loading and unloading. So I do know a loading zone is necessary, but it's always one truck. They don't come up at the same time, and they're not there all day. Because I arrive in the morning, that's when they're there. When I leave at night, sometimes they're there. So to take away all that parking, when customers can't park in Washington because of the idiotic way the city decided to have back and angled parking, that is the only way my older customers, I have to remind them they can park behind my store and let them in the back door if they knock on it. Now, they have no way, it's like you're taking away such valuable parking for something that's only used early in the morning and sometimes in late afternoon, and it's usually one truck at a time. So now you have room for like 8 trucks, but that's never a scenario. I've been there for 33 long years. Not that it's a specific location. But anyways, long enough to know that you're over way too much space for that use.
And again, I think that was one of those conversations of looking a little bit more macro. Technically, that's really not part of our project, but again, we're trying to, some of the feedback that we got from other people, is that something that could be looked at? And again, it's something we can take another look, a little more deeper dive. But that was, again, this was just kind of a kind of a summation of some of those early sessions, and we'll definitely
there is parking on both sides of that alley, parking.
Sorry, if I made a build on why that loading zone was talked about there, is almost every session of the day when they talked about kind of if the project were to grow a little bit, that Center Street portion was consistently pointed out as dangerous for visibility, dangerous because folks are parking there and then trucks need to get through and they're unable to get through, so they're having to force to back out onto 4th Street when there's an island there and two-way traffic and a train track. So the intent, I know Rick and I talked about this, the intent there was to simplify that portion of Center Street a little bit, make it so that the businesses and the property owners there can continue to receive deliveries and unload and load and park your car for 15 minutes and run stuff in and run stuff out without creating an area where customers or folks coming downtown could clog that area right there with their parked cars.
So the priority was over trucks versus customers, which we're all in need of. That's my point of view. So I'd rather have customers be the first choice than the the trucks. So most of those beer trucks do arrive at maybe early in the morning. Is that not true?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah. So during the day, it'd be nice for my customers to be able to have that parking because they cannot park backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to park in a structure. So I think you're closing an entire alley for a very short-term morning problem. I think there should be a loading zone, not the entire street, and not both sides of the street.
Understood.
Okay, I think I agree with a lot of Director London's comments here, and I think this is just one of many items that's obviously going to need some further discussion.
Yeah.
Again, as the gentleman said, this portion was not even part of the original discussion, and it was brought out by what Daniel said, by some discussion from other people coming in, asking whether we should extend that portion or not. So anyway, that's one. I think that's one thing that we just need to talk about. I am pleased with the amount of discussions that we've had. I am pleased with the feedback that we've gotten, and I hope it continues to be that way. And I'm also pleased with that we're taking our time on this and going to get it right, because we're not in a hurry. And though we want to get something done, I think it's important that we take our time and hear what everybody has to say. And I think to this point we've done that. So I'm pleased about that. Yes.
I'm sorry, I have a couple more questions.
Sure, go right ahead.
The rideshare drop-off, I think I mentioned this in the markup, I think it's unreasonable to think that all the Uber drivers are going to figure out that to drop off in this area, they're going to have to come across 4th and down Center and use that drop-off area, and they're just going to drop off on Washington.
You can designate. So if you reach out to Uber, it's the same thing.
A lot of communities are going to more the educational with the drivers.
Yeah.
And again, that was one of the conversations that came out of the sessions, is the ability, somebody mentioned about, not that again you design for one type of thing, but like the party buses and things like that. And is there a way that, again, to promote some of that conversation, can we look at how some of those things like rideshare and those type of activities could be programmed a little bit better? Again,
it's the same way they do it at airports.
Yeah.
When you get picked up at an airport,
Sure.
it's designated at this location.
Yeah.
You
so
reach out to that
it's
company.
just, again, it was
And
just kind of a
that's fine,
conversation
I think,
starter.
for pickup. I just think drop-off tends to be more like you're in the car, you see where you're going, and you say, hey, pull over, I'm going to get out here. And that's what's going to happen on Washington. So it's just I just think that we need to be mindful that at that intersection, you're going to have people pulling their car over and people are going to be getting out. Whether or not it's somebody being dropped off for work or for, whether or not they're in an Uber or they're in a private car or whatever, that area, I think we just need to be mindful about that.
Yep.
And then what you're thinking is right now is to place greenery within a paved area in front on 5th Street. The ovals are a green grass area that's the same level as the adjacent paving?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
And our thought again too is already mentally thinking the next level of not necessarily grass per se, but something more like a synthetic turf that is very grass-like would be kind of a green infrastructure, would be permeable, and could again host multiple uses like the outdoor yoga or other specialty events. So, and also be have enough where it has maybe a thick and aggregate base for, again, emergency vehicles. So we're already mentally trying to think to that 60-70% level, even at this level, on how some of these things can be as flexible as possible.
Yeah, and in a selfish way, please reach out directly to Citizen Yoga, because they use these spaces frequently, and one shouldn't assume what they need. And I'm not sure if we can get them here. I can certainly ask, but I don't want to be their representative. Because the space that you've allocated in the alley adjacent to the building now is not enough. it won't work for them, and it won't allow them to use the space in the way that they use it today. It's not to say that the way they use it today must be maintained. It's their business, and it's our prerogative. But please don't assume that they would use the space across the street, because they may not. I've only seen a class over there once. So, thanks.
Okay. Director Yeser.
I know we refer to this as a pedestrian walkway, but are we approaching it like a space, an area that is contemplated to be activated or programmed, or there's some interesting elements here, but the best example is like a stage, a small stage or something. Any activated pedestrian plaza that I've seen that's really cool has something going on. It has some music being played, or some open space for kids running around. Are we approaching it from that perspective, or not?
Well, I think the activation is, again, going to be really key, and we've already had those conversations with Daniel. I would say yes. I think going back to, there was a lot of discussion in some of the early sessions about, is there a stage? Is it a stage that can be used for different things? Not really a stage. Arts, Eats, and Beats obviously needs a much larger stage than what so I think those have been some of the conversations that we're trying to program in, some type of small little venue, for like a single artist to sit on a chair and play some music. Some of the other details might be, as we get into the 60% of overall sound systems and things like that, to, again, add some of that festive element along with lighting. So again, I guess the answer is yes, and I think that is the real key. Beyond even just the design is the activation and programming, and that's really, and I think going to be key with the DDA, and the organization itself on how to program it.
I think that has to be the objective, the goal, because we have a lot of beautiful parks, including the Centennial Commons, beautiful. But this has to be, I think, a little bit different. It's in the middle of downtown. It's supposed to, like somebody said, be an attraction to bring people to downtown Royal Oak. So we have to make it a little more interesting, and I think that's the way to do it, the activation, the programming. So we can talk more about it. And what time are the meetings? Our meeting tomorrow, or?
The adjacent property owners meeting's at noon tomorrow.
Noon? Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Nothing else for now? Okay. Tim, that was just an update for informational purposes, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Mike,
yeah, Director Key.
Just in terms of, like, we've had a lot of good conversation amongst that. Is Daniel the pin to make sure that all of our comments are going through Daniel? So just we have a combined, rather than like, all these paper cuts, we can do it with just.
You could definitely do that, and then the infrastructure committee is also trying to
wrangle all the comments.
Wrangle everything together.
Okay.
And we can meet with this. He can come to infrastructure committee meetings, and we can meet with him at that time too, along with the community involvement meetings.
We also did put out, as parallel to these meetings, a community survey online, and there will be a second one, for each of the phases. We'll keep kind of rolling that out as a way to give people that can't maybe make some of these meetings the opportunity to participate as well.
Great.
Yes.
Where are these surveys coming out? I would think that I would have been a recipient.
If you're subscribed to the consumer marketing newsletter, I would encourage you to check your junk email. There are some of our newsletters that have been getting a lower opening rate, lower link click rates, and a lot of that has to do with phishing scams and MailChimp's inability to get through some of those block servers. We also have a website that is launching tonight for Fifth Street Plaza that details what's done so far and what's coming.
You're talking to an amateur computer.
That's why you have grandchildren.
Additionally, there's signs that are currently being plan for print that'll be in that exact physical space, like an A-frame that says there's a potential plaza coming, with a QR code for them to scan, or a link, and if the DDA board and the community feels, we can move to a paper survey as well for that option.
Okay.
He's on it.
All right, and we will move on the agenda. Pride 2023 sponsorship request. Okay, let's start with Daniel.
At the April 4th Marketing and Business Relations Committee, an updated sponsorship request came before them. With this, the partnership change that was previously approved by this board changed over to Gary Bagley of Pronto, with Brian Major of the Major Group, with assistance from Kathy Vargo of On the Rocks Detroit. In essence, this is the exact same request you saw before for all of the same dollar amounts and resources, simply switching the production company after the last one backed out due to scheduling issues, among other things. And one thing that I will impress on that the committee discussed a lot is this new event producer. The Major Group has a tremendous resume of event planning experience, especially on a local event planning, including Arts Beats and Eats here in downtown Royal Oak, work with John Whitson Associates.
Okay. Okay, does anybody want to address the board at this time?
Brian Major, Kathy Varga, Gary Baglio. I don't know how to start. My apologies for this roller coaster ride that I've taken you all on. I know you put your trust in me to bring to you the best product that I can. And I think I have. The previous promoters, Marine Peanut Productions, backed out due to scheduling conflicts and the amount of other things happening in Metro Detroit at that time. However, these folks here were the sub people that they had put in place to make the event happen. So basically what we're just doing is moving them up to lead the event. I'm not sure if I should address this email. Did you want to read that, or?
The board has received the one email. It's totally up to you.
I can address it here.
If you want to address it, or you can wait to see if anybody asks a question about it. It's your preference.
Yeah, I'm not sure why Luigi didn't contact me directly. My number's in his phone. But in terms of making it available to the rest of the community, last year we at the suggestion of Carrie O'Neill and Liz Morton of the Restaurant Association, we made a very, very low-priced sponsorship for Royal Oak businesses to be a sponsor of the event for $150. That basically included the printing of a Windows sticker and the printing of a booklet that pushed people from the festival out to the different restaurants and shops in Royal Oak. That email was sent by me to everyone twice, by Carrie, by Liz, and I believe Daniel sent it out twice as well. We got 4 takers. This year, and as I said in the beginning when I came to you originally, I promise that I will learn from the missteps that we made last year and not make them again. And that's one of them, is community outreach. I will go to the Restaurant Association meetings, and I will go door to door to make sure that people know about the festival and can get involved. On top of that, a lot of the other concerns that were brought to me by local business owners have been addressed in the footprint this year. The footprint was adjusted for the church to allow access on 7th Street. Rocket Printing, the alley behind them has been left open from 6th to 7th for their deliveries. And the closure of Washington will not happen until either Thursday night or Friday morning. There was no reason to close it on Wednesday when nothing was happening. So again, I'm not going to make the same mistakes twice. And with these folks' help, we're just going to continue to build on the momentum that we started. Oh, and one other thing, the PR that we did last year could have been a lot better. And by bringing Kathy on board to help us this year, we'll definitely expound on that. So those are some pretty big missteps that we made last year, and they've already been corrected. And I encourage, I'm visible downtown all the time. Everybody has my cell phone number. If anybody has any concerns, I welcome them to call me, and we'll take care of it right away.
Okay. I will bring this back to the table here. Does anybody have any questions for this group at this time?
I guess I do.
Okay.
Just a couple questions. Is this an admission event?
At certain times, it'll be free before 5 o'clock both days.
And then how much is it to get in?
$5.
$5, okay. And I'm just looking at 23 versus 22 expenses. I mean, there's like a 50% increase in entertainment. There's like over 100% increase in volunteer staff and contracted. Can you explain that at all?
Volunteer staff and...
Last year you were at 22,000, this year at 48.
Go right there. Those increases were for security. I mean, I'm sure you know what's happening in the LGBTQ community right now. Security is a huge issue. With the protest that happened at Sidetrack Bookstore a few weeks ago, I don't think I need to illustrate why that's important. And entertainment, one of the things that we did not do well last year is reach out to the ally community. And we want to expound on that and make sure that the entire community is included. So that was the reason for the ask.
And then I guess on the beer, wine, and liquor, I mean, do you sell it on the street? Is that how that works? So
yes.
It's in and out, okay. And then as far as charity donations go, I mean, are you looking at charity partners? I mean, I look at what Ferndale does with their Pride, and they got like a bunch of charity partners, and those people can come in and help offset some of that volunteer staff and contracted cost, I would think.
We actually have, for pulling the MLCC license, we're talking to 6 feet over. And they are, it's actually called Suck It Suicide, right there? And the national arm of that is 6 feet over. And so we feel like rather than affiliating directly with an LGBTQ organization, since there are so many, and we don't want to show any kind of favoritism, for the license we want to work with somebody who's anti-suicide, and we think that they do an awful lot of work with the LGBTQ community, so we think we're covering the bases there. And then last year, Gary, you had a lot of organizations.
There was some misrepresentation at a previous meeting by a public comment. There was a lot of charitable organizations that were represented last year, and the ones that were named in that public comment all had booths there. So I'm not sure where that came from.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if you want to go ahead and have a seat then, if we need to call you, we'll call you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are back up here. Discussions, questions for staff, or anything else? Okay, at this time, there is a recommended resolution. Does the board want to take any action?
Motion.
Motion by Director Leclerc.
I'll second it.
Second by Director London. Discussion. Director Leclerc?
No, let's keep it going.
Okay. Director London, anything?
I just wanted to confirm the footprint. I don't think I saw it. I just was curious.
Washington, between 7th and 5th and 7th? Was that what it said?
Yeah, the only change on the footprint from last year is a tiny little detail on 6th Street, moving it farther away from the alley behind Rocket Printing and everything, so that whole area is going to be, you're going to be able to drive in on 6th Street off of Main and use that alley to
Just stop at Washington. They'll stop at Washington.
Yeah, it'll stop at Washington, just a little bit beyond that, because City Grill wants to be involved with it.
Okay.
But that still leaves that alley open, and it wasn't last year, so that way all the DoorDash drivers or anyone who's making deliveries or anything, that won't be closed off.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Not seeing anything else. I'm going to chime in here myself here. I'm having a little bit of problem with this to a certain extent. I do want to see the event take place. I am pro the event. I'm having a little bit of trouble with the budget here and where we're at with it. I'm looking at this and I'm stuck on a few things in my head here that I think some of these numbers are a little bit out of whack. And I have some concerns about that. I also have some concerns that of the total forecasted budget, the DDA's sponsoring almost 50% of it. And my biggest concern, and this is one that, to be very honest with the board, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to get past. This line item under beer, wine, and liquor for $25,000 is something that I'm having extreme difficulty with. I do not believe this is something that we should be working with. I'm not sure it's something that we should be involved in. We have not participated like this that I can be aware of in the past. I could be wrong. I also believe that beer, wine, and liquor is an item that is going to be purchased and it's going to be resold at a 400% markup, and the organizers are going to make a considerable amount of money on that product. And I'm not sure why the DDA would want to facilitate that. What's our role in that? So I have a problem with that. That's an item that should be the organizer's responsibility, and they're charging money for it, and they're going to make money on it. So the involvement of the DDA, that one I can't get past. So I guess, in short, I'm supportive of the event. I'm willing to vote for it, but I'm not sure that I can do it at the amount that's in the suggested resolution.
Are you comfortable at a number minus the 25,000?
I am.
Okay. So you would be comfortable with the $75,000 like we did last year?
I am. Yes, I would be comfortable with that, and I would be 100% on board with that. I'd love to see it. I also want to point out that I think this beer, wine, liquor thing is a. We do a lot of events where in downtown Royal Oak over the years, and there's a beer and wine and liquor are involved, as they should, as it should be, but they are involved in a lot of those events, and we don't contribute to that. We don't pay for that, so that someone can turn around and profit off of it. That to me, it just doesn't seem right. Director London.
Well, they're not asking for us to pay for that. You could say we're paying for the entertainment and the city services, and that's $85,000 or $90,000. They're not asking you specifically to pay for the beer and wine. Right, the budget?
I'm just looking at the budget that is before me here.
Yeah, but that's all their expenses. They're only asking for $100,000. So if you paid for the entertainment and the city services, that's like that's $90,000.
Director Yasmin.
I think technically what Director Safai is saying is it shouldn't be in the budget calculation because it's a profit center for them. So, they're saying 200,000 or whatever it is, and they want us to support almost half of it. That shouldn't be there. So now we're supporting more than 50%. I mean, I think that's really the situation.
Okay, I understand.
Can we bring them back up here because they look like they want to say something?
Sure.
Director Linden is correct. We're not asking you to pay for the liquor. That budget was prepared in full transparency for you all to see what the festival generated last year and what we're going to do this year. Not asking you to pay for the liquor. We're just putting all the cards on the table for you to see. Entertainment will cost more this year for the reasons I outlined earlier, as well as security, and that is the main reason for the 25% increase in the ask. I also stated earlier this year, it is not my intent to come to you every year and ask for 50% of the budget to produce this event. Because of the circumstances that have happened over the past year with Julie leaving as abruptly as she did, I have to rebuild all the infrastructure again this year. It is not my intent to come to you next year and ask for these large sums of money. I don't know how much clearer I can be.
So,
I mean, if I took that 25,000 off.
When you and your team were putting this 2023 forecast together, you're anticipating that your cost for this two-day event is going to be close to $250,000.
The entertainment that I've lined up already is close to $100,000 right now.
I have a question for either Daniel or Mr. Twing. Just stay right there if you don't mind. I just don't want you to have to go walk back and forth. In the suggested resolution, it's written as not to exceed the $100,000. That is unclear to me. Does that mean that we're doing some type of reimbursement here, or is that just a typo?
The not to exceed phrase is a typo on my part. The intent here is for it to authorize a $100,000 sponsorship request.
Okay, that's exactly what I'm asking.
Yeah, this was basically word for word identical to the one that came before this board and passed in December.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Okay. I guess the reason why I'm having such a hard time here is that I believe I believe what Gary's telling us here, and I do trust him, and I don't think that there's anything fishy going on here, but I believe that these are extremely rough estimates in this 2023 forecast, and I'm not sure what percentage the DDA is actually going to end up with here too. So, but I guess we'll just put it on the line here and see what happens. Mr. Twing, in the what do you call the agreement here? There is an agreement,
correct? Well, it would be a standard special event agreement. You're basically, if you whatever amount you approved would be a dollar amount that would get paid to them either incrementally, meaning some of the special event agreements say we front a portion, and then after the special event is approved, because they still have to get a special event approved by the city. So nothing would go to them until that occurs, and then the balance would go in a reimbursement after the event occurs.
Okay, so I guess
the sponsorship in general, though, isn't intended to go to any specific item under the special event permit. I guess from my standpoint, if you wanted to exclude the beer, wine, and liquor, if you still want to get 100,000, that's fine. If you only want to give 50%, you may want to reduce it to some dollar amount lower. But you're under the sponsorship, you're really not giving that sponsorship for a particular item. You're given the
I understand. Yeah, I understand.
You're given a sponsorship to have the event occur.
Is there a other than the special event permit, is there a written agreement?
Yes, we use a standard one that Daniel put together under the other ones. There's the one for the chamber, the one for they all have a standard special event agreement.
And just a note on that is we did receive the event producer's signed copy earlier. It essentially awaits this board's approval for the director to execute it fully. In that contract, it does say that invoice 1 would be 65% due upon special event permit. The additional 35% isn't due until the completion or the successful completion of the event. This contract also is, as Tim said, the standard one that we do for the chamber. It's the same one for Spooktacular, the same ones that we've used for 360 Productions throughout my time with the city, and essentially also bakes in that 45-day review process and the DDA's ability to cancel at almost any time.
Okay. I did have two last questions, and then I can be done here. And I think you just answered one. So there is, in the agreement, there is a 45-day review
after the event.
After the event. Okay. And then my last question would be the agreement, or in actuality, the dollar amount is being made with the major group and 515 Pronto?
No, just the major group.
The major group LLC is the one listed in the sponsorship. I believe Pronto, Gary, and the major group have their own agreement that would kind of work on their relationship.
The agreement with the DDA is with the major group.
Just as the previous one was with Big Time Operator, and the one before that was with 360 Event Productions.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. Okay, so we're back here. Does everybody have anything else?
I had one question.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, and this is just for events in general, right? Do we do some events, it seems like that if they don't use it, then we get it back, right? To where it's the not to exceed, it's up to, covering expenses and different things.
Yes.
Do we do that on most events, some events? I just was thinking of ways that we can say, we all want to break even and make sure that the event takes place and we cover all of our costs. It could be 75, it could be 100, it could be 65, and trying to understand that. Is that something that
What's currently baked into the contract is the 65% up front with a 35% after successful completion of the event.
Yep.
So that usually is dependent on the review.
Okay.
So Director Keith, I can help clear that up because it is an issue that I've dealt with in the past, and it's a little bit of an issue that I currently still have. There are some events where we do a pure sponsorship, and that's it. That's the extent of our how that money gets spent, and it's based on what they do.
Yep.
And then there are some events where we have contributed money based on expenditures and specific specific
Reimbursements.
costs, more of a reimbursement type situation. So we've done both,
We do both.
and we still do both.
Okay, that was kind of where I was looking at.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table right now. Is there anything else? Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. And that motion passes. Okay, moving on. Fifth Street Bistro tables, chairs, and planters.
So this was originally intended to go on this agenda. After the last infrastructure committee meeting, that I took a request to them. We flushed some things out. There was a further request to look at some planters to beautify, working with some adjacent property owners. I did not feel as though that proposal was ready for this board at this time, so that's actually going to go to the infrastructure committee meeting in a couple weeks.
Okay. Okay, our last item then on the agenda is reports. You have Siren's communication and impact report for March 2023. The next one, what is that, Charrette?
It's just information on the city's master plan, Charrette, that will occur the week of May 15th at the Center Street commercial space.
Okay.
There is a segment that is specifically focused on the downtown. So it's there for your information, and if you're interested in attending any parts of the public charrette, feel free.
Also in your packet is the recap for Winter Blast 2023.
I did have one item that I emailed out yesterday. If the board wants to entertain it, if you want to discuss it, you could add it to the agenda. If you don't, that's fine.
I do want to discuss Mr. Twings, but I have to go. I wanted to discuss one other thing, or make a motion, actually. I tried to get a discussion going about Arts Beats and Eats a couple months ago. You needed unanimous consent to add it to the agenda, so we didn't talk about it. But what I would like to do today is make a motion to add an Arts Beats and Eats sponsorship discussion for next month. I'd like to make that motion.
I have a motion on the table from Director Yesbeck.
I'll second.
Second by Director Dunstan. I think my understanding is you're just putting this on the agenda for discussion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions regarding the motion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. I gotta go. Okay. You're excused. So the item Tim, you want to discuss the item, or?
Only if the board wants to, as Tony said, you need unanimous consent to add it to the agenda. I did get an inquiry from the Department of Public Services from, well, you can leave.
You need me?
No.
Oh, you don't?
No, just the rest of them. If you leave, you're not here. I still got a quorum. Yeah, no, you're out. Go. Anyways, I got a request from the Department of Public Service, Matt Exley. They have received complaints that the lights are out down near Allenhurst. Basically, if you know where Allenhurst is, it's between Maine and Washington. It's a street that has condominiums that are within the DDA TIF boundary. Some of those lights are out on both sides of Allenhurst, the west side of Maine, and I believe the east side of Washington. There's a total of 30, but only 26 of them appear to be within the DDA district. He's indicated that the cost to replace those with the LED lights is some $18,000. That exceeds my authority to bless on a normal basis of the 3,000. So in order for them to order them, it's about a 4-week delivery time period. So I didn't really want to wait a month if you were interested in authorizing their acquisition so they could put them in. It is pretty standard for the DDA to take care of the lights that are within your boundary.
I'll move to add it to the agenda.
Okay.
Motion by Director Dunstan. Second by Director Leclerc. So I will call for the vote to add it to the agenda first. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes.
I'll move the purchase of those lamps.
Motion by Director Dunstan.
Then I got a question. Someone said.
You want it? I'll second.
Second by Director Leclerc. Discussion. Director Dunstan.
Tim, this is something we'd ordinarily be doing anyhow, correct?
Yes,
This is
if it
just-
was under 3,000, I probably would have approved it administratively, but that's all my authorization goes to.
It would take you 9 months to replace them all.
Yeah.
We can afford it, right?
I have a question though. May I?
Yes.
But we're only responsible for the lamps on the light poles within the TIF districts? I see. Thanks for the clarification.
Well, let me clarify that a little bit. You're not totally responsible for them. If you had voted no today, they'd have to find another way to maintain them.
I see.
Does it make sense to do all 30? I'm just curious. I don't know where the location well enough to
Well,
where
they are going to do all 30. There are only 26 of them within the DDA district.
Okay.
You can't pay for the ones outside the district.
Understood.
It's here. Elmhurst is this one.
Any other questions for Mr. Twain? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. Any other business today?
If I may, for our masses at home, tomorrow kicks off Eat Royal Downtown Restaurant Week. We have 22 downtown eateries, coffee shops. Most of the places you like to eat are running very special menus, as well as our DDA giveaways. Be one of the first 1,000 people to dine in downtown Royal Oak as part of this program. Receive this custom designed limited edition sticker that's usable on cars, laptops, anything but city infrastructure. Don't put it on anything. And then we also have our Lyft code running active. The first 1,000 people to essentially put in the code Eat Royal in your Lyft app can get $10 off your trip to downtown Royal Oak. And then anybody interested in, a chance at $1,000 downtown dollars, come downtown, have a meal, fill out one of the entry cards. There's also no purchase necessary options available, viewable on the website, and all of the information and menus can be found at www.downtownroyaloak.org.
Commercial.
Thank you, Daniel. If there's nothing else,
I'll move to adjourn.
second. Motion by Director Van
She got it. Give it her.
Seconded by Director Van. Any discussion?
Negative.
Seeing none, call
Thank
for
you.
the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And we are adjourned.